What is up, guys? We're back with another BIOS video, and today we're checking out the BIOS on the ASRock Z390 Steel Legend motherboard. This is, of course, their second Steel Legend motherboard. We already took a look at the B450 Steel Legend on the AMD side, and now we're over to the Intel side with the Z390 Steel Legend. And this video is basically a walkthrough and overview of the BIOS. So if you're looking for any settings or something like that, we're gonna go over it for you. And again, guys, if you have any questions, go ahead and leave it in the comment section below, you know, if you have problems with this BIOS. So something that was missing on the B450 Steel Legend was that we had no easy mode. It was kind of weird to not see that on a motherboard. I don't know if we got, you know, had an early BIOS or something like that, but there was no easy mode. But here you have it, and when you drop into the BIOS for the first time, this is going to be, you know, what you see. So over here we have information on our processor, the speed it's running, and our total memory, and the version of the BIOS that you're running. So if you ever want to know what version, we're running P1.1. Moving down, we have our memory or DRAM information. You can easily enable or disable your XMP profile. So if I click this, it will just go to auto. If I click it again, it will go back to profile 1, which is of course our XMP profile. Storage configuration, you can see all of your M.2 and SATA ports and what you have installed in each one. You can set up RAID mode and do all of that right in here. Up here, we just have some quick things. We have help. Load defaults. So again, if you just want to load in your BIOS and load a default, you can just hit that. This is save and exit, which is also hotkey F10, and then F7 would be to discard your changes. We have our time and date here. Fan status. This is, you know, your fans. So all the fans that you have connected, this is their speed and everything like that. And you can set different settings. So you can see that we have it set on standard. We can go to performance, full speed, silent, and you can kind of just cycle through all of those. Now there are some tools down here that if you click, actually, there's instant flash, internet flash, and fantastic tuning. So instant flash, that would be if you wanted to go ahead and flash your BIOS with a USB flash drive. Probably the easiest way to do it. Internet flash, of course, requires an internet connection, but you can flash your BIOS that way. And then fantastic tuning allows you to tune in each individual fan, and you have this nice little interface that shows you all that. You can do them per fan, or you can do all fans at the same time and go ahead and set everything up that way. Close out of that. Over here, we have our, you know, language. You can of course change your language. Advanced mode, that's toggled with F6, which we'll get into. Then you have real-time temperature and voltage. So CPU temperature, motherboard temperature, and CPU voltage right here. Boot priority, we only have one drive installed that has the Windows Boot Manager on it. But if you had multiple drives, you know, you can just toggle them like that and set your boot priority. So again, super easy to do, just makes it really simple. Pretty much everything that you would need is in this easy mode. You have XMP profile, you have fan settings, and you have boot priority. And that's pretty much what you're gonna wanna change when you first boot up your system. But if you wanna dive down even deeper, we can go into the advanced mode. And again, that's toggled by hitting F6 or just clicking. And now we're into advanced mode. So you'll be brought to this main screen that again gives you all of the information on what you're running and everything like that. Also note over here is our descriptions. So everything that we highlight will have a description over here and a QR code. So if you're not sure about it, you can scan the QR code with your phone and get more information on which, you know, what each setting does. My favorites, we haven't added anything to the favorites, but you can easily add any setting to this favorites, and you can, you know, just something easy to access. You don't have to go through 2 or 3 menus to get to the setting that you change all the time. Now, where you're gonna be doing most of your stuff here is in OC Tweaker. So I always like to see this in any overclocking or tuning section of a BIOS is our targets. So this is what our target speed is gonna be. This is what our target cache speed is gonna be, our target BCLK. We have all that stuff, so we know what we're gonna shoot for. So if we are overclocking, we know, you know, what we're going for. You can load defaults. You can have up to 5 user profiles, load defaults, and save different profiles as well. CPU configuration, this is everything that's going on with your CPU, and we've left this all by default, so nothing here has been changed. This is what it would look like out of the box if you've gone ahead and just installed this for the first time. we're not going to go over everything as I kind of go through a lot of these very quickly, but the main ones that you want to do, you might want to turn on multi-core enhancement, so all of the CPU cores have the highest frequency, especially when you're overclocking. CPU ratio, again, you'd want to turn this to all core or per core, you know, and that would go ahead and, you know, do your overclocking and things like that. Of course, your ratios and things like that. You know, boot performance mode as well. So if you're kind of messing with overclocks, you want to at least get to the BIOS so you can kind of do that and set everything. But again, you can turn Intel Speed Step and Turbo Boost and Speed Shift. Everything to do with the CPU when it comes to tuning is right in here. We'll escape and get out of that and go to DRAM configuration. The only thing that we've changed here is we've put this on from auto for our XMP profile. So we've changed it, and of course this is where you would enable your XMP profile if you didn't do it in easy mode, and you can see all of your timings and all that kind of stuff. You can really, you know, dive down deep and do all of your timings, and everything to do with your memory is all right here. Let's go to the top. But yeah, I mean, you can do all of your timings. It's really that simple. You can do it all right in here, especially if you know, change things from auto, and you can do your frequencies. The Dram Tweaker is, again, this just kind of like the same thing, but this gives you more of a graphical look on what you have installed and everything like that. Go out of there. Voltage configuration, this is all your voltages. So you can set, of course, your CPU voltages, your load line calibration. You're gonna wanna mess with that, especially when you're overclocking, all of your different voltages. But the two ones that you really gonna wanna change, if you're overclocking your memory, you wanna change your DRAM voltage. If you're overclocking your CPU, you're likely wanna do the CPU core and load line calibration as well. We will have an overclocking guide eventually up for Z390, where you can check out kind of what you really should be changing when it comes to overclocking and getting that best overclock. Now, in advanced, this is everything to do with the rest of what's on the board. CPU configuration, this is some of the things that wouldn't really be on the other, you know, in OC Tweaker, like turning hyper-threading on and off, active processor cores, C states, you know, all of that kind of stuff. They just like all of your normal CPU stuff, CPU throttling and all that kind of stuff you'd have in there. Chipset configuration, again, you know, you can, if you wanted to use onboard graphics, you can enable that, all that kind of stuff. You know, you can change and edit and do all that stuff. This is also where your audio and your, you know, to restore to AC power loss, stuff like that, all that kind of stuff. And this is where you can enable or disable RGB LEDs when you turn your system off. So by default, this motherboard, the RGB lighting will be on by default. So as soon as you plug in power to your system, your RGB lights will turn on. When you power down your system, the RGB lights will still stay on. So if you want them off, you can just go ahead and toggle them off there. Storage configuration, again, and this is everything to do with the SATA and M.2 ports on your system. Thunderbolt, you can enable or disable it. Super I/O, ACPI, USB. Obviously, legacy USB support is turned on by default, and all that stuff, and you can enable or disable each port, you know, the way you want it. Trusted computing, if you want to install something on the TPM header, you can go ahead and do that. And then over to tools. So we have ASRock's Polychrome RGB in the BIOS. So if you want to set your RGB stuff, you don't want to download the software, you can do it within the BIOS. And this just allows us to do the chipset heatsink and the headers and everything all together. You can set styles and do everything. It's almost like the app, but it's in the BIOS, and it's pretty cool. I don't like to load my system up with a lot of software, so the fact that I can do this within the BIOS is pretty awesome. And again, you can configure everything individually or all together if you want. Pretty nice. Text service, this allows you to actually send an email to text service, which is kind of nice. So if you're in your BIOS, you can't get into your system, that might be your only system, you can, you know, do that right here. Easy RAID installer, this will help you, you know, set up RAID. SSD secure erase, so if you happen to have an older SSD or any SSD that you have, you know, you've already erased it, but you know, maybe you're giving it to a friend or you're selling the system, you definitely want to do a secure erase. So you can go ahead and do that. Event logs, of course, you can open that up and see all your event logs. And then again, you can flash and then set up the network configuration. This is going to be important if you plan to use the text service, because you need an active network configuration, you know, an active network to do that. Under hardware monitor, this is going to give us real-time temperatures and voltages as well as fan speeds for everything on the system. So you can go ahead and do that. And again, in here, you can go ahead and set everything up as well. So you can tune your fans, you can do everything, you know, all that kind of stuff you can go ahead and set up. Security, you can set up passwords and secure boot and things like that. Under boots, you can set your boot options or your boot priorities. Again, we could do that much easier in easy mode, but it is here. All the boot stuff, you know, boot screen logos and things like that, you can set up here. And then under exit, of course, you can save changes, discard changes. I love seeing load defaults, and I love seeing boot override here. So when you install Windows, which you should be installing from a flash drive, I don't know anybody who's still using a actual boot disk, but you should be doing it from a flash drive. And when you do, you can set your boot priority how you want it. Of course, load the hard drive first, blah, blah, blah. And then you can just go into the BIOS and hit boot override on the flash drive, and it will boot from that once. But then when, of course, Windows does its restart, it will boot from your normal hard drive and continue the installation. So you don't have to worry about pulling that drive out. And guys, that is pretty much it. I know I went through it pretty quickly, but one thing I like is that we do actually have an easy mode here, and it does have pretty much everything that you would want. But secondly, if we go back in, you know, everything is pretty easy to find. You know, if I'm going to overclock my CPU, of course, I'm going to, you know, mess around in here and things like that. And it's not like, you know, to find most things, it's like 1 or 2 menus. It's not a whole bunch of menus to go through and everything like that. And I do like that, you know, you do have your descriptions of all of the different settings. If we go to a setting, you know, it tells us more about it, which is nice too. But again, the easy mode works great. You know, I think this BIOS is pretty snappy too. It doesn't seem laggy or anything like that. I haven't had any issues with it so far. So if you have any questions about this BIOS, go ahead and leave it in the comments section below. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and subscribe. Till next time, catch you guys later.